Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do some cracks and decals that we can create in Substance Designer and move over to Unreal Engine. This is part of a series that I'm going to do. I recently made a concrete material and we're going to do some decals to put over the top of it. And this is going to be the first one. It's going to be cracks. We're also going to do leaks and grunge and all sorts of other cool things and edgeware and stuff like that. But the first one I thought we could start with, which is one that everyone's interested in, is just kind of putting cracks on there. And these cracks don't have to just be used on concrete. They can be used on anything. You can kind of see on the screen right now some of the results we're going to achieve. It's a relatively easy material to do, so I'm going to walk you through right from start to finish. And just a reminder, I am a small channel, so interacting with these videos, if you find any value in them, is great. Like, subscribe, comment, anything helps me kind of keep my stuff in the algorithm, so maybe I can get a few more views. Right now I'm pretty small. So let's just get started. Now you can see my substance graph here in Substance Designer, and it's not all that complicated, so this one should be pretty easy. There are a couple tricky parts in Unreal, and we're going to take you from start all the way to the finish. So to get to this point, we go to File, New, and you do New Substance Graph, and you can name it whatever you want. I named mine T-Cracks just for my naming convention, and then just hit OK on Metallic Roughness here. Now when yours pops up, there's going to be a lot of nodes, and you can delete the one that says metal, and you can delete the one that says ambient occlusion, because we're not going to need those today. So we're just going to start off, and we're going to go right here to our cracks part. And this is just for our main cracks shape. As a reminder, to put the nodes in, you hit the space bar and you can search them out. So I'm going to go node to node from start to finish and show you all the settings. It will be possible that I will miss a setting or two. I will try my best not to, but I will show most of the settings will be here on the right hand side of the screen, and you can see what they are if something doesn't quite look right. I will try to do my very best to not make a mistake. But if you do need to reference the right hand side of the screen, then that's where all of the settings for each of the nodes will be. So like I said, let's get down to business. First we're going to start with cracks right here, and we're going to make the base cracks. You can see what you're doing here in the 2D view. So I just searched out, this is cells 4 here, and you can see with anything you can have random seeds on. You can copy my random seed number. It's pretty long, but I do encourage you to hit this randomize button over here by the random seed, and you can get different variations that you can try for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with going through and trying different variations to get a different look. If you want to look exactly like mine, you're going to have to put in that humongo number there. So we put in a cells 4, and we got scale 6, disorder 0. Those are the settings for that. I ran that into an edge detect. The edge detect width is 1, edge roundness 2. Okay? And now we'll do a crystal, and you'll see there's my random seed there. The scale is 5, disorder 0.6 down here. Okay? So then those get blended together, that crystal and that edge detect. So what you can see is happening here is the cells, it's detecting the edges, kind of rounding these corners off a little bit to give us kind of a base shape. Then we're going to run that and blend that with these crystals. And that's min darken with opacity 1, crystal over the edge detect. And we get this. Now we'll run another edge detect. You can see now it gives us this really cool small and all these other different details in there, okay? And down here the width is 1, edge roundness 0.95. I do encourage you to play with all of this stuff once you get comfortable. So now we'll run this edge detect into a levels, and the reason I'm doing that is if you notice here you have a lot of like artifacting going on. Now you could actually use that, to be perfectly honest. It will make bumps and stuff, but I just like to kind of even it out so I can have better control myself. And also the levels will kind of anti-A-list a little bit. Sometimes with this stuff it'll look really A-list in there. So we'll levels it out here. And you can see the result in the 2D view of the levels. Now here's the handle. I pulled this handle way up, and you can see here are the settings if you want to put them in with the numbers. Okay, if you want, you can just click this little guy and you can put in numbers. But otherwise, you just pull the handle up until everything darkens pretty good. Now we're going to run that levels into an invert grayscale. The main reason I run it into an invert grayscale is I have an easier time seeing the white on the black than the black on white. You can work the opposite way, but I like to be able to see what's going on with the map, and it's harder for me the other way around. Now we're going to run that invert grayscale into a directional warp. You can see the intensity here, 7.2, warp angle 0. Those are the settings for that, and we're going to run a crystal into the input intensity of the directional warp, and the crystal settings, 13 scale, 0.72 disorder, and here's the random seed again. But play with all these and you'll get all sorts of different cracks, especially, I'll go back to the beginning here, especially these first two. You play with those and you're going to get all sorts of different neat variations. Okay, you play with this one and it's just going to warp it a little bit different. So then that runs into this directional warp, like I said, and you can see it kind of like swervies things around a little bit here and there in our 2D map. So we'll also run that directional warp into a slope blur grayscale and go down here. Here are the settings. Samples all the way up to 32, intensity 0.055, and mode min. So you run the crystal right into there, donk, slope blur grayscale, donk, and there you go. And that just kind of blurs some of these slopey edges here when you get into it. Run that through another slope blur grayscale, and this will make it even crunchier. So the settings of this new slope blur grayscale are 32 and 0.1, and we'll run a black and white spots into the bottom of that. The black and white spots, here's a random seed there, and you've got scale 4, disorder 0.87, roughness 0.43, and run that into the slope blur grayscale slope. And there you go. And this is kind of what you get. You get this crunchy edge wear for your cracks. Now we'll run that slope blur grayscale into a levels. And the main reason I do that is I kind of want to just get it a little bit lighter. And then you run the levels into this invert grayscale here. And then we're basically, that's the height map. The height map's done. So that's where I put height done and put that in comment box. You can put the comment box using this little frame tab up here. Okay, so that's great. That's a good start. We'll run our height done into the height output right here, and I changed the identifier to HEIGHT in caps. That's just my own personal preference. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. And now we're going to add a little bit more detail for the normal map that's not in the height map, because the height map is going to be used for parallax. I'm just going to add a little bit of this grunge concrete here for our normal detail. So look up grunge concrete. I don't believe I'm pretty sure I didn't change anything on that, but you can check these settings here. You can randomize the seed. It doesn't really make much of a difference. Run the grunge concrete into a blend. Blend that over our height done. And then we'll just do overlay at a really low opacity of 0.15. Okay? We'll run that blend into a normal Sobel, and that turns it into a normal map. And we'll do that at intensity 4, and we'll run that into our normal map output here. Okay? Here's our normal map output. And I changed the name of that to NRM. That's just my particular preference again. So now we already have our height and our normal done for our cracks. So that's pretty great. So now why don't we move over to color? This is going to go pretty quick. So we'll go over to color here. We'll put in some uniform colors. Put in 2 uniform colors. We'll open one up and I'll give you the numbers for that. This is the hex number for the first one, 737373. And here's the second uniform color. And here's the hex, 757482. And then we'll do put in a grunge map number 8 here. and we're going to blend those two colors together using that grunge map. So run this into a blend, into the opacity, and then run these two uniform colors into the blend. And now if you see, this is what it looks like when you blend those two colors together like that. Very subtle. We're doing a relatively simple color map today. So that was base color. Let's do a dirt color. We'll do the same thing. We'll make two uniform color nodes here. 1, 2. I'll open up one. Look at the color for that. Here's that number there, 706454. And then the second color, 7E7155. A couple different variations of brown. We're going to blend those two together. Same thing again, just under copy. And we'll just use this grunge map here, and I use grunge map 1. Okay? And that gives you a result that looks something like this for our dirt. Okay. So now we're going to blend the base color and the dirt color together. So put the dirt over the base color. See, here's the base, there's the dirt. And now we need a dirt for our opacity mask. We're going to use a dirt. So we can come down here, and we come down to this normal detail again, and this last one, this output right before the normal Sobel, and we run that up to an ambient occlusion RTAO. That's what this is here, ambient occlusion RTAO. Okay, no changes to that one. Then you put in a dirt. Now you can search that out. I'll show you, DIRT. It's this dirt right here, this one right here. Okay, so run the ray trace ambient occlusion into the dirt ambient occlusion section of the dirt, and we also need a curvature, and you make a curvature using a normal map. So we connect our normal Sobel that we made here up to a curvature smooth. Just look that puppy up, run that curvature smooth into the curvature of our dirt, and this is the result we're going to get. To be perfectly honest, it's not going to make much of a difference. You're not really going to see a lot of this outside dirt because that's going to be masked off. It does very subtle stuff on the insides. So we come up here and blend those two together. And what you do is copy with opacity 1. Okay? And then let's run this blend into another blend. So we'll just output into that blend, and we're going to just add just a tiny bit of shading. So I'm going to zoom back in. I might be kind of jerking around a little bit too much here. So we're going to run this blend into another blend, into the background, and into the foreground, we're going to plug just a tiny bit of ambient occlusion shading. So we're going to run from the normal detail, this blend here, run a line out here into an HBO ambient occlusion. And you can see the result here. This is what that looks like. That gives you a little bit more of a variation in the different shading. So we'll run that into a gradient map, and that's just to turn it into color. So into a gradient map with the color checked on, and then we'll run that gradient map up into this blend that we were talking about before, put it on multiply, and 0.11. That just will darken everything ever so slightly, and you can kind of see the results of the darkening, the different variations. Really what we're mostly concerned about is the color inside of the cracks, not outside, because the outside color is going to be masked away for our decal. Now we'll run this blend into our base color, and that finishes our color map. And in our base color output, we'll just put COL. That's how I like to do it, for COL for color map. Okay, so now let's see. We've done our height map, we've done our normal map, and we've done our color map. So let's do our roughness map. So let's zoom here into the normal Sobel just before the normal output. Okay, remember normal Sobel here. And it's 4. Oh, and I probably didn't mention, these up here I probably randomized, these grunge maps. That one doesn't look like it is. That one isn't either. Okay, so no, I didn't. But you can randomize those to get different results. It won't make too much of a difference, honestly. So we'll run this normal Sobel here down to the curvature smooth right here, and you can see what a curvature smooth does. tries to find the curves in your height map or in your normal map. So we're going to run that curvature smooth. We're going to invert it because lighter is rougher, and you want it to be more rough down in the cracks, or at least that's what I want. So we're going to run the invert grayscale into a levels. We're just going to lighten everything up a decent amount. And you can see I pulled this black handle to the right. And you can also look at the numbers. These are the exact ones. And then we're going to run this into our roughness. And I name that ROUGH. And here's the roughness map. It's very, very rough because it's the inside of a crack. So we don't really want it to be too shiny. Okay, so that's our roughness output. So now let's head over, and we need to make a mask. Now, to do that, we make our own output node here. And to do that, you just search output. And you can put in an output node just like this and name it up here like mask, right? And it's naming mine mask 1 just because I already had it named mask over here. But that's how you put in your own output nodes. And so we'll just delete that away. And this will be for our opacity. Okay. So the goal with this is to mask off areas of the edges so that it doesn't go, it's just not a perfect square when we put our decal down. So now we're going to work on our mask. So first we do a shape, just a circle. There's like a million ways to make masks, and I did kind of fly through this one. So you could do a million, once you have an understanding of what we're trying to do, there's other things you could try out. And I do encourage you to experiment, because otherwise you're not learning if you're not experimenting. So we take the shape here. We got scale 0.77. I don't believe I changed. This is a disc, so it's just straight. And then we're going to use a purlin here at 4. And I have a random seed here. You can play around. And then we warp that shape. And you can see we get this kind of blobular deal here. Now, play with your purlin. You don't want any of the white going to the edges. So play with your purlin. Don't let anything get cut off. Otherwise, it's going to look silly. You want to have it masked off around the edges and have this white on the inside. So we warp here with intensity 11. We take that warp into this blur. We blur that at just I think that's just the default, which is 10. And then we come up here to the levels when it was still black, and we bring it down to this levels. And in this levels, I get it all nice and masked off. You can see I pull these handles, and I'll show you. It looks like I pulled the gray all the way and the white really far down. And here are the settings if you want to just input those numbers. But your goal is to try to mask off all of the cracks with white. Okay? So we'll take this, pull it into a blend, and then we'll multiply our blur over the top. And you can see what that does is it masks out the edges here. And we just have the cracks in the middle. And now I wanted to kind of mask out some little other areas on the inside, so we're going to do that as well. And so I made another purlin down here. This one's scale 4. And then we level this so that we have the black and white are tighter together. You can see how I pulled the handles. Otherwise, you can put in these numbers here. And of course, with this purlin, this is the random seed. If you want to make your mask exactly the same as mine, you're going to have to put in these seed numbers. So here's this one, and here's the first one on the first purlin, and here's the second one. I do encourage you to do your own again, and then you can see all of the different kinds of masky effects that you can get. So we're going to run this levels up into another blend, another multiply, and we'll multiply this over that, and you can see now it has some of these little cuts going in to our mask, giving us this result. Like I said before, this was a pretty quick mask. I do encourage you to spend some time. Just to kind of, for the sake of the speed of the tutorial, I kind of kept it on the simple side. So we'll run that into our mask output. And that is the whole material in Substance Designer. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to export our materials, and then we're going to pack some of them together and then import them into Unreal. Okay, so the first thing is you can right click up here on your T-Cracks or whatever you named it, and you go Export Outputs. And it'll show you all your different outputs, T-Cracks cull, and we'll set them all to sRGB because it doesn't really matter. And we'll just export those all. Just pick up folder, do BMP, export to sRGB, and export outputs. Okay. All right, let's close that down, and now let's do a channel packing in Photoshop. Now, you don't necessarily have to have Photoshop to do channel packing, but you do need a program that allows you to access the channels, the color channels of your images. So we'll do a new, and I'll show you what I mean here. We'll do new 2048 by 2048, and we'll create. And that's just this is what we're going to use to pack into. And then you can see you have your layers tab here and then your channels. And here's red, green, and blue. And this is where we're going to put our maps that we're going to pack together. So now we need to open up the masks that we need to pack. So we need roughness. That's one. This is our roughness. We need height. That's two. And we need mask, which is, I'm going to name opacity. So we need roughness, mask, and height. Okay, so we click on the roughness one, Control A to select all, Control C, and then the red channel, Control V. Okay, and then switch channel to the green channel, and we'll go to our mask, Control A, Control C, and then in the green, Control V. So you're selecting all, copy and pasting. Okay, so now in the red channel we have this, in the green channel we have the mask, and now we'll go to our blue channel. And in our blue channel we'll go Control A, Control C, and this is height, Control V. Okay, close that, and now here we go, and that's what it should look like at the end. So now we'll save this. Actually, let's save it as a copy, and we'll do BMP. And here's what I named that, T-Cracks ROH BMP. ROH standing for roughness, opacity, and height for future reference. So we just save that. I'll just overwrite the one I had, and there you go. And that's channel packing into one image. So let's close that down, and now we're going to start in Unreal. Okay, now we're in Unreal, and the first thing you'll want to do when you're in Unreal is, if you have a textures folder or wherever you want to put your textures in your content browser, just go to textures here, and you want to import these. So I have my T-Cracks color, I have my normal, and the ROH. You don't need the other ones because those ones are packed all into this one. So go, if you need to know how to do that, right click in there, import to current folder, browse to them, select the ones you need. We can even do it quick. We'll do color, normal, ROH, open. We'll re-import them, yes, and there you go. And luckily we did everything right, so everything looks good. And there's our cracks in all its glory, but I still need to show you how to make the material to do that. And it is a little bit tricky. So let me show you the problem. And the problem is I've already created one that I called bad here. And here's a master material that I called bad. And I want to use parallax occlusion mapping in my decal. And I put this standard parallax occlusion mapping in here. And the problem is that doesn't play well with decals. And I'll show you what I mean. So I made this D-Cracks bad. All right, I'll pull out a little bit. And if we take the D-Cracks bad and we put it on the ground, you'll notice, what am I complaining about? That's not a big deal. That looks pretty good, right? Yeah, what's his problem? So kind of look at that. So the problem is it looks good one way, but it doesn't look good when we start rotating it. So let me rotate it quick. Do it like at 90 degrees, and I'm going to stick it on this wall over here, and you'll see the problem. Now if I come over to it, you see it's being really goofy. It's just not giving us the right effect. You see how it's like pulling up towards the top? That's because it's not using the correct vector. And so we're going to have to actually fix that. And it's a little complicated, but we can do it, and it's pretty easy, and I'll show you what to do. So first of all, let's delete that out. We're going to make our own material function for parallax occlusion. So the best way to do that is if you open up like your material viewer here, like say, it doesn't really matter, just make a material or whatever. Like let's just do it from a new material here. Let's create a new material and let's open that up. Now in here, if you right click and you look parallax up, parallax occlusion mapping, here's the original one. Now if you go to here, over here in the material function, you can browse to that engine file and hit that. And if you shut this down, and you'll see it browsed to the parallax occlusion mapping function in the engine files, and here it is. So we're going to take that and copy it. So if you don't have this over here, we're going to see here's the engine parallax occlusion mapping. We're going to make we'll have our other content browser here of our stuff. You can go to your content and go through your folders this way. And if you don't have this content browser number 2 here, you can go to window and then you can activate it here. It'll pull up and you can pull it over there. So I'm just going to put it in. I made a material functions folder and I've already made our own one, but we're going to make a new one. So we'll just grab this one from the engine, pull it over, and don't move it. Don't move it. Copy it here. And then we'll name it. And we're just going to call it, you could call yours POM Decals. I'm just going to call mine Sample for now because I'm going to delete it out. So then what you want to do is open that puppy up. And then you find this spaghetti code, and this is their parallax occlusion material function. I know, seems pretty intimidating, but what we're doing here won't be that bad. What we need to do is replace these camera vector nodes everywhere they are. So, and I'm going to show you exactly what to do. Okay. So first of all, let's close this down. I'm going to open up the one where I fixed it already. And here is, I'm going to just copy and paste the code that I did over to our new material function. Then I'll walk you through what we need to do. Okay, so I copy and pasted that code in here. So we need this camera vector node here you can see on the top. You can grab that. You can either look it up or you can grab it and Control C and V here. So click on it, Control C, click over here and Control V. And we want to run this into an inverse transform matrix. Okay? So to search for things in here, instead of space like in the other program, this is right click. So you can see I just looked it up. Here's inverse transform matrix. That's what we need. So we run our camera vector into that. And these are vector 3s here. You can hold the 3 key and put it down. And you want to put in some numbers. So for this one, you want to put in 1 for the Z. You want to make another one and put 1 for the Y. That would be the positive Z axis, the positive Y, and the negative X, so -1. So 1 in the Z for this one, 1 in the Y for that one, -1 for this one. Okay? Okay, so we need to transform these vectors. So I'll show you how to do that. Look up vector. And then go down to transform here. You see how it says tangent space to world space? Right here, you want to switch that to local space and to world space. So local space to world space, and delete that, we don't need that. but we can transform each of these. So plug these into that, that into that, and that into that. Local space to world space. Plug this one into basis X. Plug the green into basis Y, and plug this one, the last one, into basis Z. Inverse transform matrix, normalize that. So just look up normalize. Okay, so from the normalize, we just want to add a reroute, named reroute node, so we can make things easier on ourselves. So we'll just put a named here. And it says add named reroute declaration node. We want to add one of those in, and then you make up a name. And I put in custom camera vector. You can see it up here. Custom camera vector, and you can make it a color so it kind of stands out. So now you can come down to here, and you can, when it go to named reroutes, you can put in your custom camera vector. Okay? And there you go. And you want to replace everywhere you have this camera vector. Okay, so you want to plug it in everywhere that's plugged in. So we go into there, we go into there, and we go into here, and delete that out. So that was right before view trace length. And let's see if we can find the other ones. So now we'll look it up again. Here's the camera vector again. Let's control C that so we can copy it next time. This just goes into the B. Delete that. All right, and then here's one, control V. This goes into the B there. Delete that. That's 3. I think there's one more in here somewhere. Here it is. Control V. And then we can plug this into the A there and get rid of this and delete that. And let's see. That should be all of them. And if you've done things correctly, and then just save that and close it. I'm just looking one more time around. Just want to replace all of those nodes. Again, here's the first stuff that we did up here. And you just save that and close that down. And we're going to add that to our material. Now I've already got one set up here, and I'll show you that it's exact same. Here's the same thing here, and then I've got the camera there, 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 and there. Okay? Let's save that. I'm just going to delete that out. So now that we have our own POM decal function here, we can use, or whatever you named it, we can use that in our material. So let's go to decals here, and I'll show you the master material I created. So I called it D for decal, C for color map, ROH, roughness, opacity, height, N for normal, and then master. Okay, so right click, create a new material, name it that. Open that up. Okay, so this is me from the future, and rewatching the video, I realized I hadn't told you what material domain and blend mode to use for our master material here. So I'm going to just show you that right now. You select the output here, and then on the left hand side you want the material domain to be deferred decal, and you want the blend mode to be translucent. And that's really all you need to set over there, but that'll give you the plugins that you need to create the master material. And we're going to we can leave it maximized, and you can see here's our POM decals function, our own one that we made. You can just look it up. So whatever you named it, just look it up by that. And you can see I have it there, bunk, there it is. Okay. Now for this, you can use the textures we made as your temporary placeholder textures, or you can pull in, I have 1 pixel by 1 pixel white textures that I do. I made a very simple material here, and I'll run through it really quick. This is a texture sampler, and this is just our color map. So if you just pull it in, if you pull in the 1 pixel or whatever, turn it into a parameter, name it color, plug it into base color. Okay? This is just a texture sample node, so just look that up right here. And don't actually attach image to that yet, because we will do that later. Okay? You can pull your normal map into here and plug that directly into your normal map. I'm keeping this pretty simple this time, just because everything else was a little bit complicated. So this right here is a texture object. So look that up. Here it is right there. That's your texture object, and you'll need to pull your map into there. So you can either pull in a temporary one like I have here for the white, or you just pull in that ROH one that we made. Okay, so I called this roughness opacity normal, which of course is incorrect. So I'm going to fix that. We're going to call it roughness opacity height. So then yes, turn this to a parameter too. I think I said turn the normal map to a parameter so that and name it normal so you can change it in the material instance. Do the same thing up here and name it either ROH or roughness opacity height. Okay? And connect this down into the text of that texture sample I said to do earlier. And also run it down into our POM decals that we created. Okay? And these are 3 values that we convert to parameters. So hold one key down and right click to convert to a parameter. This one we name height ratio, put at 0.02. Doesn't really matter what you put that at, because you're probably going to change that depending on your material. Min steps put at 8, that's the default. Max steps put at 32, that's the default. This is a vector 4 down here, so 4, and left click. This is a vector 4, so 0, 0, 1, 0 put in for that. So 0, 0, 1 for the blue is 0. And why that is because this is determining where our height map is in our image. So as it's roughness opacity height, the height map is in RGB in the blue channel. So that's telling this where it is. So plug that into here. This is important. And the out of the POM decals parallax UVs goes into the UVs of our texture samples here. So this one into their bunk, this one into their bunk, this one into their bunk. Okay? And then this texture sample, the R goes into roughness. Okay? And the G goes into opacity. So rough R, O, and height was plugged in up here. So there you go. There's our master material. So save that. Then we make a material instance off our master material. I'm going to delete this other material I've got in here out. And here's my material instance, and I didn't name that one correctly either. I like to name them DI for decal instance, and we'll call it cracks. And POM. Okay, DI cracks POM looks good. So create a material instance off of the one we just made. So right click on that and create material instance. Name it DI cracks POM, and then open that puppy up. So here's the stuff. Change the height ratio. This is pretty important for this one, otherwise it's going to look all wacky. To 0.0035. Tick all of these tick boxes on for color, normal, roughness, opacity. And go to wherever we put wherever you put the textures, and pull them in there. So you just pull them in, color onto color, normal onto normal, ROH onto ROH, right? And there you go. That should be good. Now we have our material, and that's what we've got down there. So if we go to our decals, and we just pull our material in, there we go. And now I'll show you that it's fixed when you put it on a wall. So let's rotate it to 90. Now it's something to note that decals can get much more complicated than this, and I'm trying to keep things relatively simple, but to give you a good result. So let's kind of come up here. Let's put her in. And now you'll notice it's bumping correctly when we put it on the wall. Okay? And there you go. Now you can see our cracks. Okay, so here is the end result. You can see here I've got it on a few different surfaces. You can play with, let me show you. If you play with the height map ratio, you can get it to bump in and bump out more depending on what you want. I didn't really add any other controls to this. I wanted to kind of keep it a little bit simpler because we're doing quite a bit. But I also put it over here on the floor just to show you that these cracks can be used on a multitude of surfaces. And yeah, so I put it there, now we have it on the wall over here just to give you some ideas of what you can do. And again, play around with this stuff in Substance. You can make multiple different types. And that's, I guess, where we're going to leave it. I think we covered everything. So, and if you need help making like this type of world, or you want to be able to make other types of materials, I do have a starting with Unreal tutorial that I'll link. I also have a making master materials that I'll link, and that would end up letting you add more controls to these decals, and might help you in the future. So thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. I'm a small channel. Every interaction helps, and I hope you have a great day. Take it easy.